Why do we know smoking causes cancer and still keep smoking? Is it because cancer always feels like something that happens to someone else? If you think that way, this video is for you. Before we begin, let me ask you one simple question. Have you ever inhaled cigarette smoke? It doesn't matter whose, yours or someone else's. On the street, in a bar, as a child, standing next to your parents? If the answer is yes, congratulations. You've already been part of the experiment. Because tobacco is not just a habit, and it's not just a business. It is the longest and most widespread experiment ever conducted on humanity. And it's still going on today without our informed consent. And today, it feels like the worst is behind us. We're told cigarettes are old news, that now we have vapes, electronic devices, and so-called safer alternatives. But are they really safer? In this video, we'll break down how tobacco conquered the world, why humanity spent centuries treating poison as medicine, how marketing turned addiction into something desirable, and why new nicotine products may be just as dangerous as the old ones. The birth of poison. Tobacco was born in the Americas. Long before Europeans ever set foot on this continent, indigenous peoples of the Americas already knew tobacco. But here's the critical part. They didn't use it the way we do. For them, tobacco was not a daily habit, not a mass consumer product, not a way to relax. Tobacco was a ritual plant. It was used in spiritual ceremonies and shamanic practices, in symbolic acts connected to war, death, and transitions between worlds. The doses were tiny, the frequency was rare, and most importantly, no one was inhaling tobacco dozens of times a day, for years on end. But when Europeans first encountered tobacco, they completely missed the context. What they saw was a strange, unfamiliar plant, smoke, altered states, calm, and they made a fatal assumption. This must be something beneficial. Tobacco began to be exported to Europe, grown on plantations, sold as an exotic novelty. And very quickly it became fashionable. First among elites, then among merchants, then among everyone. America didn't just give Europe a plant, it gave it a future epidemic. When Europe turned tobacco into medicine. European medicine of the 16th and 17th centuries was a mix of early science, religious belief, and imagination, and tobacco fit perfectly into that system. It was believed to be warming, cleansing, calming. Tobacco was sold in pharmacies. Doctors prescribed it. It was introduced into the body in every possible way. And here's an important point. This wasn't a conspiracy. It was a systemic mistake. But that mistake permanently legitimized tobacco in the public mind. When poison became a habit. This is where the most dangerous shift happens. Tobacco stops being a ritual, a medicine, an exotic curiosity. It becomes a daily behavior, and that changes everything. Because the human brain can fear danger, but it doesn't fear routine. Smoking slips into everyday life, after meals, during stress, in social moments, alone. And that's where the illusion forms. If I do this every day, it must be safe. But inside the body, the process has already begun. Nicotine is not a relaxant. It's a powerful neurostimulant. It mimics acetylcholine, a key neurotransmitter, hijacks brain receptors, forces the nervous system into an emergency mode. 20 to 30 minutes after a cigarette, nicotine levels drop. Receptors start signaling distress, anxiety, irritability, and discomfort appear. So the person smokes again, not for pleasure, but because dependence has already formed. This is tobacco's greatest trap. Cancer doesn't hurt. Blood vessels deteriorate silently. Lungs lose function gradually. A person can look healthy, work, live an active life, while slowly draining the body's reserves every single day. This isn't a sudden blow, it's slow depletion. When science spoke and no one listened. By the 18th and 19th centuries, doctors began noticing patterns. People who regularly used tobacco died more often, got sick more frequently, developed strange tumours in the mouth, throat and lungs. But society didn't react. Why? Because everyone smoked. Smoking was socially normal. The harm wasn't immediate. When doctors first stated that tobacco causes cancer, it didn't cause panic. It caused skepticism. People said, "My grandfather smoked and lived to 80. This is exaggerated. Everything is harmful." And in that moment, the industry understood something crucial. There was no need to deny the danger. It only needed to blur it. Instead of outright lies, the strategy became imitation of scientific debate, funding alternative research, manufacturing doubt. Not "this is safe," Malv, but "things aren't that clear." And that strategy still works today. How a cigarette kills the body, step by step. Now the most important part, not in abstract terms, not in generalities, what actually happens inside a smoker's body. Every day, millions of cells in the body develop errors. That's normal. But carcinogens in tobacco smoke increase those errors. A smoker's immune system becomes worse at eliminating them. Nicotine accelerates cell division, prevents damaged cells from dying, creates ideal conditions for malignant transformation. Cancer isn't something that suddenly appears. It's something that wasn't stopped in time. The heart and blood vessels. Nicotine constricts blood vessels, raises blood pressure, increases heart rate. Over time, vessels lose elasticity, atherosclerosis develops, the risk of heart attack and stroke rises, and often the first symptom is sudden death. The lungs and COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, doesn't appear overnight, has no cure, progresses over years. People struggle to breathe, can't climb stairs, slowly lose the ability to inhale enough air. This isn't aging, this is the consequence of smoking. Mass production and the manipulation of consumers. At this point, it's important to pause and recognize something clearly. The nicotine epidemic didn't happen by accident. It wasn't a side effect of progress, it wasn't random. At some point, people appeared who saw tobacco as the perfect product. And they stopped thinking like farmers. They started thinking like engineers, marketers, and strategists. Before industrialization, tobacco was a craft. But by the late 19th century, a new type of player emerged, the industrial manufacturer. Tobacco stopped being a product. It became a flow. Manufacturers quickly realized a simple truth. A one-time purchase is weak business. Addiction is long-term success. A cigarette couldn't be too strong, or it would repel beginners. And it couldn't be too weak, or it wouldn't hold experienced users. It had to be precisely calibrated. This wasn't medicine anymore. It was behavioral engineering. Manufacturers tested how fast someone takes their first puff, which puff triggers coughing, how many cigarettes people smoke per day, when a smoker reaches for the next pack. They weren't measuring health, they were measuring behavior, and youth interested them most, not because they smoked more, but because they would smoke longer. This wasn't individual cynicism, it was system logic, the screen and the formation of norms. When direct advertising began to face restrictions, manufacturers didn't fight the rules. They went around them, through the screen. This wasn't about smoking because it looked cool, it was about controlling the image. Smoking on screen didn't look like advertising, felt like part of a character's identity. And that's why this story is so dangerous, because it isn't about the past, it's about a mechanism that still works. The filter, the greatest lie of the 20th century. When filters appeared, people were told, now it's safer. But filters create resistance, force deeper inhalation, push smoke further into the lungs, into peripheral areas, where cancer is harder to detect. The result? The type of cancer changed. It became more aggressive, Diagnosis came later. This wasn't harm reduction, it was harm redistribution. Vapes, snuff, and history repeating itself. When cigarettes began losing popularity, the industry changed form again. Vapes. You're told it's just vapor, but it's an aerosol, a chemical mixture, heated propylene glycol and glycerin, heavy metals from heating elements. New diseases appear: acute lung injury, respiratory failure, sudden deaths, sometimes after only days of use. Snus. A single portion can contain 10 to 20 times more nicotine than a cigarette. It destroys oral tissue, causes cancers of the lips, gums and cheeks, and yet it feels safe. This is the most dangerous kind of deception. 500 years ago, humanity inhaled tobacco smoke for the first time without understanding what was happening. 100 years ago, science said, "This kills." Today, we know more than ever, and we still repeat the same cycle. A new form, new packaging, the same consequences. And now the most important thing must be said. No one is forcing you anymore. Not advertising, not society, not fashion. In the 21st century, tobacco kills not because we don't know, but because we've learned to look away. This video is ending. The experiment is not.